gave me the signal to begin. So very welcome. To begin, as I always do, with a drawing or a painting of somebody with disabilities or problems which make people treat them badly. But up to now, it's been people I know are being taken care of. I'm going to speak about something else. Jesse, could you show this? I was in Penn Station. It was in Penn Station where I always went to sketch. There's a waiting room. But lately, the waiting room has been closed to anybody who doesn't have a ticket. Which means that somebody like this woman cannot sit down anywhere, any place in Penn Station, which is a public place. People
Hold on.
Can you hear me? Tell me if you can hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, should I begin again?
Yeah.
At the beginning?
Yes.
Then let me have the picture again.
No, now it is. Now it is. Yes.
Yes.
You're good.
Okay.
Start again.
Okay. I'm going to begin as usual with somebody, with a drawing or a painting of somebody who has been denied the rights of other people. And it happens to be always what I'm doing is working with people to show you that people who have any kind of a disability tend to be so badly mistreated. Up to now, the people I've spoken about and showed you drawings of have been people who have been taken care of. Now I'm going to show you the many who have not been. Jesse's going to show you this drawing. I saw her at Penn Station. She hobbled in, desperate for a place to sit, but there is no place anymore. Jesse, what was the date on the drawing?
October 19th, 2015.
2015.
And Mom, it's on your Facebook page. They can all see it on there. It's on your Facebook page. Everyone can see it.
Oh, okay,
there.
good. It's on my Facebook page, so everyone can see it. But it was at that time that suddenly the place where I always went to sketch was only open for people who had a ticket. Not a ticket that they came there like I had, but a ticket to show that I'm about to leave. So that the homeless who used to sit there could no longer go there. And on that day I thought, well, so that's Long Island Railroad. And I went upstairs to where Amtrak was. And Amtrak had the same thing. There was no waiting room for anybody who was not about to use a train. Another place for the homeless to be banished from. And it reminded me of, I had a commission to do the Garment Center, and I loved working in the Garment Center. I picked that huge, wonderful statue of a man with a sewing machine. And right near him, there was a tree, and the tree had a bench circled around it. And I would sit there. And one day I came, and it was gone. And I said to one of the guards, what happened to that wonderful bench? And he said they had to remove it because the homeless were sleeping there. And step by step I began to see that people who could not afford their own chair that they could carry with them were not welcome anywhere. And I need to speak about that because we are now in a world where absolutely hundreds and thousands of people have been thrown out of their homes. The fires, in California, the homeless in San Francisco. Are we our brother's keeper? Or is that something you read about in the Bible but can't practice here? What happened to me was that I'm lucky. I don't look homeless. There's a look about those who are. It's a look of despair and fear. I'm going to speak of something else today now. I'm going to speak about 9/11 because I have a wonderful story to tell. I used to go to Barnes and Nobles whenever I painted or drew. I would stay in those places, but when I wanted to do sketching, I would always go to Barnes and Nobles and go to their coffee shop, and you could take free books. You could read. You could just really feel at home. I loved Barnes and Nobles. But what I noticed was that if you are in the coffee shop, the whole panorama of New York is stretched out in front of you. By the way, the drawing from that, well, I did a painting and a drawing, but the drawing that I did is shown there also.
So is the painting.
Yeah, and so is the painting. I'll talk about that also. But first about the drawing. I asked permission to the manager if I could set up just to draw. I wouldn't need paint or anything, but just to make a drawing of that amazing skyline. And I did. They were wonderful. They made me feel at home. And so I did that drawing. And then I went home and I took the drawing and put it on. First, we're going to show you the drawing. It's also on Facebook. And I went home and I took the drawing and I enlarged it on a huge canvas. And I went into the street to paint. And whatever happens when I work in the street, because I'm doing their neighborhood, a whole group of people find out about it and they become a sort of little community for me. They wait until I come and they watch. And I'm sitting there right next to Broadway where I can see that whole panorama. And suddenly an airplane went by. And one of the people who was a constant visitor when I did that said, "Airplanes don't come here. This is strange." And minutes later his cell phone rang and he began to shout, "Oh my God, no, oh no, 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 oh no, oh no." And he ran into Broadway. And I and everybody else ran with him. And we saw the smoke coming out of the World Trade Center. I will never forget our reaction. I knew this wasn't happening. This was my city. This was the World Trade Center. And I remember I was struck dumb. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. And nobody else did either. When something like this happens, your mind blocks it. At least mine did. And I packed up my things and I went back to Barnes and Nobles. And the guard there, who had become a friend already, said, "Hedy, go home. Go home as quickly as you can. Something terrible has happened. Another plane crashed somewhere else. And the news are full of it now. Soon the trains will stop running. You won't be able to get back to Long Island. Go. Just pack up and go." And I packed up And I couldn't bear to go home because I called my husband and he said, don't come home. Go to Joni's house. Go somewhere, but don't come home. I don't know if the trains are going to be running. So Joni at that time worked, I believe, in 20-something or 30-something street. That was where her office was. And I went with my easel and my pictures and my everything, because I hadn't driven. I had been taking the train. And everybody was sitting around the television, wondering, will they ever go home? How will they get home? Will the subways run? Will the bridges be closed? And in the time of horror, I went home with Joni. Kenny, who worked in the city, my son, ended up there too. And we were all filled with fear. And later at night, Kenny went downstairs with me so that I wouldn't be alone, and found a taxi for me because we found out the trains were running. And the taxi driver wouldn't take any money from me. He said, not tonight. No, he said, whatever I can do to help my city, I will. And he wouldn't take any money. And when I got home, I've never been the same since, because I was able to come home and my family was alive. This is not the end of the story. When I went back to paint, I was standing there and a young woman came up to me and she squatted on the ground so that I could hear her and nobody else could. And she says, I'm Muslim. I am so afraid of Americans now. They've given me so many expressions of hate. I love this country. Just because I'm Muslim, I'm suddenly an enemy. So after that, I took my drawing, which you have seen, and I added people. I added signs asking people if they knew of so-and-so. Do they have a message for somebody? We have become a city of mourners. And I have both of those. When Jesse's finished with my website, the stories I wrote of both of them are on the website too. Because we changed. During that time, we made the world be our enemy. Every Muslim is an enemy. But suddenly people are beginning to speak. Black Lives Matter are suddenly being said. It wasn't said before. I think there will be a renaissance. And the renaissance will be that we will stop blaming a person for the matters of everyone. How much time do I have?
15 minutes.
I have 15 minutes. Okay, then let me tell you what my life journey is. I want to stop that hate. If I overdo on these programs, we need to be overdoing something besides hate. I began to write letters. I wrote to Pearl Buck. Pearl Buck did wonderful things. She wrote continually.
Go back and tell that you did that when they were doing the nuclear testing so many years ago.
Okay.
So that they know when you did that.
Okay. Years ago, when they were doing the nuclear testing, when I went to sleep at night wondering, how can I protect my children? Are we really going to use nuclear bombs on all of us? Is this the new reality? Pearl Buck wrote a letter back to me. I treasure it. I wrote to John Steinbeck because he wrote also about hate and anger and how to go against it. I have a letter from him also. Begin to write. Begin to write to people you admire. It doesn't help to write to the people whom you hate, because they're not listening. When people need to hate, nothing can stop them. I see it in our politics now. Okay? I want to also give gratitude. I was born in Vienna, Austria, a wonderful city, until Hitler came. And I hated Vienna after that, because we were lucky enough, we escaped. We escaped to Panama. America would not take us in. They had a quota against Jews, and I'm a Jew. But Panama took us in. And when the time came for me to be allowed to get into America, I found out that there was segregation of such cruelty that I didn't want to stay in America. But I saw America changing. And suddenly, I remember there's an organization that took in people from Africa. And I went to see people there on a ship. They had come literally wearing rags. Hatred is all over the world. I want my country to do less of it. Above all, my one plea is, don't separate families. If you are going to not keep people from coming here, let the families be together when you banish them. Don't separate, as we are doing with ICE. ICE are people who carry signs saying that they're from the United States government. And I've seen photographs where the children are torn out of the arms of a parent, and the parent is trying to grab the child. Is this who we are? Is this my country? Because I love this country. Do you know how we got civil rights? Young black people, and older black people too, but mostly the young, said no more. And Martin Luther King went to Gandhi and learned peaceful non-resistance. And it worked. Gandhi, who was a man of color, but a brilliant scholar, I believe he was a lawyer also, he knew violence doesn't work. So he marched in a loincloth with so many people with him and marched against the British with no weapons and won. Martin Luther King marched with no weapons and won. And that's why we have civil rights. And when Black Lives Matter are in the streets now, they're trying to make you understand the job is not finished. Because I'm Jewish, but I think what Christ was trying to prove is what Christianity really wants to be. Then do it. Do it. Next week, I would like to talk about Austria because we did go back because Eric and my kids said, if you don't go back, you won't forgive them. You'll carry the anger, and that isn't fair. Don't hate a whole world of a city because of the actions of a few. And we went back, and it was wonderful. And I would like to speak about it next week because I met a family that has become so close to my family, the Neusiedlers. And I also met a woman who's the editor of a newspaper, and I would love to speak about her too. I would love to speak about what Vienna did to make up for the hate. Thank you. Are there any questions? Is there anything anybody wants to ask me?
Jess, why don't you read what people have said, all the stuff people have said, read it out loud.
I can't hear.
Sure. Let's see.
I don't hear.
I'm going to read you some comments from people.
Oh, okay, that I can hear.
But you have to do it super.
Because there's an airplane going by. So speak loudly.
All right. Mary Lou Bill Gray said, "Hi, Hedy, joy."
Mary Lou, I love what you've been writing to me. You're giving me a family history. Okay, go ahead.
Sandy says, "Good evening, Aunt Hedy." Tammy says, "We can hear you."
Tammy, you began all of this for me. Don't stop.
Let's see.
I miss the person between Tammy and Mary Lou.
It was Sandy.
My Sandy, please keep sending me the comments because I can't find them. Thank you.
Okay, so Donna says, "Hi, beautiful Hedy. I love you. You're a snow shoveler helper, Donna."
Thank you.
Sandy sends a heart. Let's see. Janine says, "Hi, Hedy."
Janine, thank you.
Joe Tripp says, "I remember going to Ground Zero with Ken a month or so after 9/11, and how moving it was to share that experience with him."
Oh, when we talk, please do.
Stephen Schlechel
My favorite neighbor.
says, "You're a remarkable person. You always see the best in people. You always have a smile."
Well, I see the best in you, too.
All right, so you have a question. And this question is, what do you suggest we do now when hate is gaining so much ground in our country?
Vote. Please vote. Vote. And vote where you see peace and kindness. Please. Remember, we got civil rights because of votes of young people. We old ones do vote, but we need the young ones. To me, anybody who is not 91 like me is young. So make sure you vote.
Let's see. Paula says, "Hedy, you inspire us so. Can't wait to have a hug."
Oh, it'll happen. There'll be a renaissance and we will hug.
Hardev says, "You are a great person. I admired you and miss you with a big smile."
I love you. Okay, let me say one thing to all of you who've been writing to me through Facebook. I have to explain, especially to people from other countries, Americans do not know how to speak. Because how do we greet each other? Hello, how are you? And the answer is, Fine, thank you. How are you? And that's the ending. A lot of you from Facebook just say to me, hello, or why don't you speak to me? Or I'm supposed to be your friend, why don't you act like a friend? Because you're a machine. When you work with Facebook, you are broadcasted throughout the world. And I'm afraid of that. If I could speak personally to you or on an email, I would love it. But for the universe to hear you saying, hello, why don't you want to be my friend? I don't know how to answer because you're not there. You are thousands of people who listen to Facebook. So please, please take my friendship for granted. But I don't know how to speak on Facebook. And I know Messenger would do it, but that's another machine to deal with. And I don't know who else will read it. I have this feeling that everything is out in the universe and privacy is gone. So forgive me, but if you can find somebody who can email me, do it through them. Thank you. I think the time is over.
2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes. Then let me just say, this whole idea of becoming a friend on Facebook is just so that Facebook gives you permission to listen to me. And I want you to listen to me, but I would love to listen to you. And I don't know how to do it without speaking to the whole universe, which is not the way we can be comfortable with. Maybe somebody will invent something where I can speak privately to you and not have all of Facebook know it. Thank you.
So you have one last question. Well, one last set of questions.
Sure.
So Mary Lou Bill Gray says, Hedy, what is your next project?
My next project, you know what? And I'll show it to you next week. Since I can't do old buildings because I can't sit on the streets until this virus is over, I've been doing my daughter's backyard. And I'm going to start teaching oil painting when I do that. That doesn't mean I'll paint next to you, but I can explain the colors I use. I can explain the problems I have. Okay? But the next project that I want to do would be to get my knapsack and my chair and my easel, and I guess I'll be the only 91-year-old woman sitting on street corners to paint.
Mary Lou Bill Gray, she asked, what do you have in mind to draw and paint next? Which you already answered. So then she suggested a drawing of love and how we can avoid being mean to others.
Oh, if I were to do a drawing of love, I would take my daughter's little dog because he kisses everybody. And he's going to be in the painting that I'll show you next week. I think you're waving your hand, so I should say goodbye. Goodbye. I love you all. I really do. Even the ones that I can't write to. Thank you. And let's make the world better. Help me do that. Because what they say in kindergarten, be nice.